This is Wilhelmine von Hillern's On the Cross, a romance of the Passion Play at Oberammergau, a public domain work. Chapter 32. Tothe Village. The burgomaster's house, with its elaborate fresco, Christ before Pilate, still stood without any signs of life in the grey dawn. The burgomaster was asleep. He had been ill very frequently. It seemed as if the attack brought on by Freya's flight had given him his death blow. He had never rallied from it. And as his body could not recuperate, his mind could never regain its tone. When Ludwig Gross's violent ring disturbed the morning silence of the house, the burgomaster's wife opened the door with a face by no means expressive of pleasure. "My husband is still asleep," she said to the drawing-master. "Yes, I cannot help it. You must wake him. I've important business." The anxious wife still demurred, but the burgomaster appeared at the top of the staircase. "What is it? I am always to be seen if there is anything urgent." "Good morning. Go into the sitting-room. I'll come directly." Ludwig Gross entered the low-ceiled but cheerful apartment, where flowers bloomed in every window. Against the wall was the ancient glass cupboard, the showpiece of furniture in every well-to-do Ammergau household, where were treasured the wife's bridal wreath and the husband's goblet, the wedding gifts, cups with gilt inscriptions, in perpetual remembrance, which belonged to the wife, and prizes won in shooting matches or gifts from visitors to the Passion Play, the property of the husband. In the ivy-grown niche in the corner of the room was an ancient crucifix. Below it a wooden bench with a table on which lay writing materials. On the pier table between the widows were a couple of images of saints and a pile of playbills of the rehearsals which the burgomaster was arranging. Against the opposite wall stood a four-legged piece of furniture covered with black leather, called the sofa, and close by the huge tiled stove, behind which the burgomaster's wife had set the milk to thicken. Nearby was a wall cupboard with a small writing desk, and lastly a beautifully polished winding staircase which led through a hole in the ceiling directly into the sleeping room, and was the seat of the family cat. This was the home of a great intellect, which reached far beyond these narrow bounds, and to which the great epochs of the Passion Play were the only sphere in which it could really live, where it had a wide field for its talents and ambition, where it could find compensation for the 10 years' prose of petty, narrow circumstances. But the intervals of 10 years were too long, and the elderly man was gradually losing the elasticity and enthusiasm which could bear him beyond the deprivations of a decade. He tried all sorts of ventures in order at least to escape the petty troubles of poverty, but they were unsuccessful, and thereby he only became burdened the more. Thus in the strife with realism, constantly holding aloft the standard of the ideal, involved in inward and outward contradictions, the hapless man was wearing himself out, like most of the natives of Ammergau. "Well, what is it?" he now asked, entering the room. "Sit down. Don't be vexed, but you know my husband must have his coffee, or he will be ill." The burgomaster's wife brought in the breakfast and set it on the table before him. "Don't let it get cold," she said warningly, then prudently retreated, even taking the cat with her, that the gentleman might be entirely alone and undisturbed. "Drink it, pray drink it," urged Ludwig, and waited until the burgomaster had finished his scanty breakfast, which was quickly done. "Well, what is it?" asked the latter, pushing his cup aside. "I have news for you. Freya is here." "Ah!" The burgomaster started, and an ominous flush crimsoned his face. His hand trembled nervously as he smoothed his hair, once so beautiful, now grey. "Freya! How did he get here?" "I don't know. The question died on my lips when I saw him." "Why?" "Oh, he is such a spectacle, ill, half-starved, in rags and ecce homo. I thought my heart would break when I saw him." "Aha! So Nemesis is here already." "Oh, do not speak so. Such a Nemesis is too cruel. I do not know what has befallen him. I could ask no questions, but I do know that Freya has done nothing which deserves such a punishment. You can have no idea of the man's condition. He is lying at home, unable to move a limb." The burgomaster shrugged his shoulders. "What have I to do with it? You know that I never sympathize with self-created sorrows." "You need not, only you must help me obtain some means of livelihood for the unfortunate man. He still has his share of the receipts of the last Passion Play. He was not present at the distribution, but he played the Christus from May until August. To the best of my recollection, his portion was between 700 and 800 marks. "Quite right. But as he had run away and moreover very generously bequeathed all his property to the poor, I could not suppose that I must save the sum for a rainy day, and that he would so soon be in the position of becoming a burden upon the community. What did you do with the money? Don't you know? I divided it with the rest. Ludwig stamped his foot. Oh, heaven! That was my only hope. But he must have assistance. He has neither clothing nor shoes. I haven't a penny in the house except what we need for food. He cannot be seen in these garments. He would rather die. We cannot expose him to mockery. We must respect ourselves in him. He was the best Christus we ever had, and though the play was interrupted by him, we owe him a greater success and a larger revenue than we formerly obtained during a whole season. And, in return, should we allow him to go with empty hands, like the poet in Schiller's Division of the Earth, because he came too late? Yes. The burgomaster twisted his moustache with his thin fingers. I am sorry for him, but the thing is done and cannot be changed. It must be changed. The people must return the money, cried the drawing-master vehemently. The burgomaster looked at him with his keen eyes, half veiled by their drooping lids. Ask them, he said calmly and coldly. Go and get it, if it can be had. Ludwig bit his lips. Then something must be done by the parish. That requires an agreement of the whole parish. Call a meeting, then. The burgomaster smiled. That is no easy matter. What do you think the people will answer if I say, Herr Freya ran away from us, interrupted the performances, made us lose about 100,000 marks, discredited the Passion Play in our own eyes and those of the world, and asks in return the payment of 800 marks from the parish treasury? Ludwig let his arms fall in hopeless despair. Then I don't know what to do. I must support my helpless old sisters. I cannot maintain him too, or I would ask no one's aid. I think it should be a point of honour with us Ammergau people not to leave a member of the parish in the lurch when he returns home poor and needy, especially a man like Freya, whom we have more cause to thank than to reproach, say what you will. We are not a penal institution. No, nor an asylum. Well, we need be neither, but merely a community of free men who should be solely ruled by the thought of love, but unfortunately have long ceased to be so. The burgomaster leaned quietly back in his chair. The drawing-master became more and more heated as the other remained cold. You always take refuge behind the parish when you don't wish to do anything, but when you desire it, the parish never stands in your way. The burgomaster pressed his hand to his brow, as if thinking wearied him. He belonged to the class of men whose hearts are in their heads. If anything made his heart ache, it disturbed his brain too. He remained silent a long time while Ludwig paced up and down the room, trembling with excitement. At last, not without a touch of bitter humour, he said, I am well aware of that. You always say so whenever I do anything that does not suit you. I should like to see what would become of you, with your contradictory, impulsive artist nature, today Hosanna and tomorrow crucify him, if I did not maintain calmness and steadiness for you. If I, who bear the responsibility of acting, changed my opinions as quickly as you do, and converted each of your momentary impulses into an act, I ought at least to possess the power to kill too. Day and tomorrow, when you repented, restore the person to life. 10 years ago, when Freya left us in the lurch for the sake of a love affair and dealt a blow to all we held sacred, you threw yourself into my arms and wept on my breast over the enormity of his deed. Now, because I am not instantly touched by a few rags and tatters and the woe-begone air of a penitent recovering from a moral debauch, you will weep on your friend's bosom over the harshness and want a feeling of the burgomaster. I'm used to it. I know you Hotspurs. He drew a pair of boots from under the stove. There, I am the owner of just 2 pairs of boots. You can take one to your protégé, that he may at least appear before me in a respectable fashion to discuss the matter. I don't do it at the cost of the parish, however. And I can give you an old coat, too. I was going to send it to my Anton, but no matter. Only I beg you not to tell him from whom the articles come, or he will hate me because I was in a situation to help him, instead of he me. Oh, how little you know him, cried Ludwig. The burgomaster smiled. I know the Ammergau people, and he is one of them. I thank you in his name, said Ludwig, instantly appeased. Yes, you see you thank me for that, yet it is the least important thing. This is merely a private act of charity which I might show any rascal I pitied. But when I, as burgomaster, rigidly guard the honour of Ammergau and consider whom I recommend to public sympathy, you reproach me for it. Before I call a parish meeting and answer for him officially, I must know whether he is worthy of it, and what his condition is. He again pressed his hand to his head. Send him to me at the office. Then we will see. Ludwig held out his hand. No offence, surely we know how we feel toward each other. When the drawing master had gone, the burgomaster drew a long breath and remained for some time absorbed in thought. Then he glanced at the clock, not to learn the hour, but to ascertain whether the conversation had lasted long enough to account for his headache and exhaustion. The result did not seem to soothe him. Where will this end? His wife looked in. Well, father, what is it? The burgomaster took his hat. Freya is here. Good heavens! She clasped her hands in amazement. Yes, it was a great excitement to me. Tell Anastasia that she may not learn the news from strangers. She has long been resigned, but of course this will move her deeply. And above all, don't let anything be said about it in the shop. I don't want the tidings to get abroad in the village, at least through us. Farewell. The burgomaster's family enjoyed a small prerogative, the salt monopoly, and a little provision store where the tireless industry of the self-sacrificing wife collected a few groschen. If I don't make something, who will? She used to say, with a keen thrust at her husband's absence of economy. So the burgomaster did not mention his extravagance in connection with the boots and coat. He could not bear even just reproaches now. A man was often compelled to exceed his means in a position like his, but women did not understand that. Therefore, as usual, he fled from domestic lectures to the inaccessible regions of his office. The burgomaster's sister no longer lived in the same house. As she grew older, she had moved into one near the church which she inherited from her mother, where she lived quietly alone. Yes, who's to run over to Stassi, lamented the burgomaster's wife, when we all have our hands full, as if she wouldn't hear it soon enough. He'll never marry her. Rosal, Rosal! The burgomaster's youngest daughter, the predestined Mary of the future, came in from the shop. Run up to your aunt and tell her that Herr Freya has come back, your father says so. Will he play the Christus again? Asked the child. How do I know? Your father didn't say. Perhaps so, they have no one. Oh dear, this passion play will be your father's death. The shop bell, pleasantest of sounds to the anxious woman, rang. Customers must not be kept waiting, even for a little package of coffee. She hurried into the shop and Rosal to her aunt Stassi. This was a good day to the burgomaster's worthy wife. The whole village bought something, in order to learn something about the interesting event which the Gross sisters, of course, had told early in the morning. And, as the burgomaster's wife maintained absolute silence, what the people did not know they invented. And, of course, the worst and most improbable things. Ere noon the wildest rumours were in circulation, and parties had formed who disputed vehemently over them. The burgomaster's wife was in the utmost distress. Everybody wanted information from her, and how easily she might let slip some incautious remark. In her task of keeping silence, she actually forgot that she really had nothing at all to conceal, because she knew nothing herself. Yet the fear of having said a word too much oppressed the conscientious woman so sorely that afterward, much to her husband's benefit, she was remarkably patient, and spared him the usual reproach of not having thought of his wife and children when she discovered that he had given away his boots and coat. Thus, in the strange little village, the loftiest and the lowliest things always go hand in hand. But the noble often succumbs to the petty when it lacks the power to rise above it. Chapter 33. Received again. All through the morning, the street where Ludwig's house stood was crowded with people. Toward noon a whisper ran through the throng. He's coming. And Freya appeared. Many pressed forward curiously, but shrank back again as Freya drew near. Good heavens, how he looks! Freya tottered past them, raising his hat in greeting, but spite of his modest bearing and simple garb he seemed to have become so aristocratic a gentleman that no one ventured to accost him. Something emanating from him inspired reverence, as if, in the presence of the dead, he was dead, at least to the world. The people felt this, and the gossip suddenly ceased. The parties formed in an envious or malicious spirit were reconciled. He won't live long. This was the magic spell which soothed all contention. If he had any sin on his conscience, he would soon atone for it. If he had more money than the rest, he must soon leave it behind, and if he desired to take a part, he could not keep it long. Only the children, who meanwhile had grown into tall lads and lasses, ran trustfully to meet him, holding out their hands with the grace and charm peculiar to the Amergau children. And because the grown people followed him, the little ones did the same. He stopped and talked with them, recognizing and calling by name each of the older ones, while their bright eyes gazed searchingly into his as sunbeams pierced dark caverns. Have you been ill, Herr Freya? No, my dear children. Or yes, as people may regard it, but I shall get well with you. And, clasping half a dozen of the little hands in his, he walked on with them. Will you play the divine friend of children with us again? Asked one of the larger girls beseechingly. When Christmas comes, we will all play it again. A strange smile transfigured Freya's features, and tears filled his eyes. Will you stay with us now? They asked. Yes, it was only a single word, but the children felt that it was a vow, and the little band pressed closer and closer around him. Yes, now you must never go away. Freya lifted a little boy in his arms and hid his face on the child's breast. No, never, never more. A solemn silence reigned for a moment. The grief of a pure heart is sacred, and a child's soul feels the sacredness. The little group passed quietly through the village, and the children formed a protecting guard around him so that the grown people could not hurt him with curious questions. The children showed their parents that peace must dwell between him and them, for the Ammergau people knew that in their children dwelt the true spirit which they had lost to a greater or less degree in the struggle for existence. The children had adopted him. Now he was again at home, in Ammergau. No parish meeting was needed to give him the rights of citizenship. A little procession reached the town hall. Freya put the child he was carrying on the ground. It did not want to leave him. The grown people feared him, but the children considered him their own property and were reluctant to give him up. Not until after long persuasion would they let him enter. As he ascended the familiar stairs, his heart throbbed so violently that he was obliged to lean against the wall. A long breath, a few steps more, then a walk through the empty council room to the office, a low knock, the well-known, "Come in." And he stood before the burgomaster. It is not the custom among the people of Ammergau to rise when receiving each other. "Good morning," said the burgomaster, keeping his seat as if to finish some pressing task, but really because he was struggling for composure. "Directly." Freya remained standing at the door. The burgomaster went on writing. A furtive glance surveyed the figure in his coat and shoes, but he did not raise his eyes to Freya's face. The latter would have seen it. At last he gained sufficient composure to speak, and now feigned to be aware for the first time of the newcomer's identity. "Ah, Herr Freya," he said, and the eyes of the two men met. It was a sad sight to both. The burgomaster, once so strong and stately, aged, shrunken, prematurely worn. Freya an image of suffering which was almost startling. "Herr Burgomaster, I do not know whether I may still venture." "Pray take a chair, Herr Freya," said the burgomaster. Freya did so, and sat down at some distance. "You do not seem to have prospered very well," said the other, less to learn the truth than to commence conversation. "You doubtless see that." "Yes." "I could have wished that matters had resulted differently." Both were silent, overpowered by emotion. At the end of a few minutes, the burgomaster continued in a low tone, "I meant so well by you. It is a pity. Yes, you have much to forgive me. No one knows that better than I. But you will not reject a penitent man if he wishes to make amends for the wrong." The burgomaster rubbed his forehead. "I do not reject you, but I have already told the drawing master. I only regret that I can do nothing for you. You are not ill. I cannot support you from the fund for the sick, and it will be difficult to accomplish anything with the parish. Oh, Herr Burgomaster, I never expected to be supported. Only, when I arrived yesterday, I was so weary that I could explain nothing to Ludwig. Otherwise he would surely have spared you and me the step which his great sympathy induced him to take. The clothing with which you have helped me out of embarrassment for the moment, I will gratefully accept as loaned, but I hope to repay you later." "Pray let us say no more about it," answered the burgomaster, waving his hand. "Yes, for it can only shame me if you generously bestow material aid, and yet cherish resentment against me in your heart for the wrong I have done. What my sick soul most needs is reconciliation with you and my home, and for that I can ask. I am not implacable, Herr Freya. You have done me no personal wrong. You have merely injured the cause which lies nearest to my heart of anything in the world. This is a grief which must be fought down, but for which I cannot hold you responsible, though it cost me health and life. I feel no personal rancour for what had no personal intention. If a man flings a stone at the image of a saint and unintentionally strikes me on the temple, I shall not make him responsible for that, but for having aimed at something which was sacred to others. To punish him for it, I shall leave to a higher judge. Permit me to remain silent. You must regard the matter thus from your standpoint, and I can show you no better one. The right of defense is denied me. Only I would fain defend myself against the reproach that what is sacred to others is not to me. Precisely because it is sacred to me, perhaps more sacred than to others, I have sinned against it. That is a contradiction which I do not understand, and I cannot explain. Well, it is not my business to pry into your secrets and judge your motives. I am not your confessor. I told you that I left God to judge such things. My duty as burgomaster requires me to aid any member of the parish to the best of my ability in matters pertaining to earning a livelihood. If you will give me your confidence, I am ready to aid you with advice and action. I don't know what you wish to do. You gave your little property to our poor. Do you wish to take it back? Oh, never, Herr Burgomaster. I never take back what I give, replied Freya. But you will then find it difficult, more difficult than others, to support yourself, the burgomaster continued. You went to the carving school too late to earn your bread by wood carving. You know no trade. You are too well educated to pursue more menial occupations, such as those of a day labourer, street sweeper, and so on. And you would be too proud to live at the expense of the parish, even if we could find a way of securing a maintenance for you. It is really very difficult. One does not know what to say. Perhaps a messenger's place might be had. The carrier from Linderhof has been ill a long time. Have no anxiety on that score, Herr Burgomaster. During my absence, I devoted my leisure time mainly to drawing and modelling. I also read a great deal, especially scientific works, so that I believe I could support myself by carving if I keep my health. If that fails, I'll turn woodcutter. The forest will be best for me. That gives me no anxiety. And the burgomaster again rubbed his forehead. Perhaps if the indignation roused by your desertion has subsided, it may be possible to give you employment at the Passion Theatre as superintendent, assistant, or in the wardrobe room. Freya rose, a burning blush crimsoned his face, instantly followed by a death-like pallor. You are not in earnest, Herr Burgomaster. I render menial service in the Passion. I. Then woe betide the home which turns her sons from her threshold with mockery and disgrace, when they seek her with the yearning and repentance of mature manhood. Freya covered his face with his hands. Grief robbed him of speech. The burgomaster gave him a moment's time to calm himself. Yes, Herr Freya, but tell me, do you expect, after all that has occurred, to be made the Christus? What else should I expect? For what other purpose should I come here than to aid the community in need? For my dead cousin Josepha received a letter from one of our relatives here, stating that you had no Christus and did not know what to do. It seemed to me like a summons from heaven, and I knew at that moment where my place was allotted. Life had no farther value for me. One thought only sustained me, to be something to my home, to repair the injury I had done her, atone for the sin I had committed, and this time I should have accomplished it. I walked night and day, with one desire in my heart, one goal before my eyes, and now, to be rejected thus. Oh, it is too much, it is the last blow. Herr Freya, I am extremely sorry, and can understand how it must wound you, yet you must see yourself that we cannot instantly give a man who voluntarily, not to say willfully, deserted us and remained absent so long that he has become a stranger, the most important part in the play when want forces him to again seek a livelihood in Ammergau. I am become a stranger because I remained absent 10 years. May God forgive you, Herr Burgomaster. We must both render an account to him of our fulfillment of his sacred mission. He will then decide which of us treasured his image more deeply in his heart, you here, or I in the world outside. That is very beautiful and sounds very noble. But, Herr Freya, you prove nothing by your appeal to God. He is patient, and the day which must bring this decision is, I hope, still far distant from you and myself. It is perhaps nearer to me than you suppose, Herr Burgomaster. Such phrases touch women, but not men, Herr Freya. Freya straightened himself like a bent bush which suddenly shakes off the snow that burdened it. I have not desired to touch anyone. My conscience is clear, and I do not need to appeal to your compassion. A person may be ill and feeble enough to long for sympathy without intending to profit by it. I thought that I might let my heart speak, that I should be understood here. I was mistaken. It is not I who have become estranged from my home. Home has grown alienated from me and you, as the ruling power in the community, who might mediate between us, sever the last bond which united me to it. Answer for it one day to Oberammergau, if you expel those who would shed their heart's blood for you, and to whom the cause of the passion play is still an earnest one. Oh, Herr Freya, It would be sad indeed if we were compelled to seek earnest supporters of our cause in the ranks of the deserters, who abandoned us from selfish motives. Herr Burgomaster. Freya reflected a moment. It was difficult to fathom what was passing in his mind. It seemed as if he were gathering strength from the inmost depths of his heart to answer this accusation. It is a delicate matter to speak in allegories where deeds are concerned. You began it out of courtesy to me, and I will continue from the same motive, though figurative language is not to my taste. We strike a mark in life without having aimed. But to keep to your simile, I have only deserted in my own person, if you choose to call it so, and have now voluntarily returned. But you, Herr Burgomaster, how have you guarded, in my absence, the fortress entrusted to your care? The Burgomaster flushed crimson, but his composure remained unshaken. Well, you have opened your gates to the most dangerous foes, to everything which cannot fail to destroy the good old Ammergau customs. You have done everything to attract strangers and help Ammergau in a business way. It was well meant in the material sense, but not in the ideal one which you emphasize so rigidly in my case. The more you open Ammergau to the influences of the outside world, the more the simplicity, the piety, the temperance will vanish, without which no great work of faith like the Passion Play is possible. And the world has a keen appreciation of truth. The world believes in us because we ourselves believe in it. As soon as we progress so far in civilization that it becomes a farce to our minds, we are lost, for then it will be a farce to the world also. You intend to secure in the Landrath the cutting of a road through the Ettel mountain. That would be a great feat, one might say. Faith removes mountains, for on account of the Passion Play consent would perhaps be granted. Then your name, down to the latest times, would be mentioned in the history of Ammergau with gratitude and praise. But do you know what you will have done? You will have let down the drawbridge to the mortal foe of everything for which you battle, removed the wall which protected the individuality of Ammergau, and amid all the changes of the times, the equalizing power of progress has kept it that miracle of faith to which the world makes pilgrimages. For a time, the world will come in still greater throngs by the easier road. But in a few decades it will no longer find the Ammergau it seeks. Its flood will have submerged it, washed it away, and a new, prosperous, politic population will move upon the ruins of a vanished time and a buried tradition. Freya, the Burgomaster was evidently moved. You see the matter in too dark colours. We are still the old people of Ammergau, and God will help us to remain so. No, you are so no longer. Already there are traces of a different, more practical view of life, of so-called progress. I read today at Ludwig's the playbills of the practice theatre which you have established during the last 10 years since the Passion Play. Herr Burgomaster, have you kept in view the seriousness of the mission of Ammergau when you made the actors of the Passion buffoons? Freya. The Burgomaster drew himself up haughtily. Well, Herr Burgomaster, have you performed no farces, or at least comic popular plays, was the carver of Ammergau, which for 2 years you had publicly performed on the consecrated ground of the Passion Theatre, adapted to keep the impression of the Passion Play in the souls of the people of Ammergau? No. The last tear of remembrance which might have lingered would be dried by the exuberant mirth, which once roused would only too willingly exchange the uncomfortable tiara for the lighter fool's cap. And you gave the world this spectacle, Herr Burgomaster. You showed the personators of the story of our Lord and Saviour's sufferings in this guise to the strangers, who came, still full of reverence, to see the altar, on which the sacred fire had smouldered into smoke. I know you will answer that you wish to give the people a little breathing space after the terrible earnestness of the Passion Play, and, from your standpoint, this was prudent, for you will be the gainer if the community is cheerful under your rule. Happy people are more easily governed than grave, thoughtful ones. I admit that you have no other desire than to make the people happy according to your idea, and that your whole ambition is to leave Ammergau great and rich. But, Herr Burgomaster, you cannot harmonize the two objects of showing the world, with convincing truth, the sublime religion of pain and resignation, and living in ease and careless frivolity. The divine favour cannot be purchased without the sacrifice of pleasure and personal comfort, otherwise we are merely performing a puppet show with God, and his blessing will be withdrawn. Freya paused and stood gazing into vacancy with folded arms. The Burgomaster watched him calmly a long time. I have listened to you quietly because your view of the matter interested me. It is the idea of an enthusiast, a character becoming more and more rare in our prosaic times. But pardon me, I can give it only a subjective value. According to your theory, I must keep Ammergau, as a bit of the Middle Ages, from any contact with the outside world, rob it of every aid in the advancement of its industrial and material interests in order, as it were, to prepare the unfortunate people, by want and trouble, to be worthy representatives of the Passion. This would be admirable if, instead of Burgomaster of Ammergau, I were Grand Master of an order for the practice of spiritual asceticism, and Ammergau were a Trappist monastery. But as Burgomaster of a secular community, I must first of all provide for its prosperity, and that this would produce too much luxury. There is not, as yet, unfortunately, the slightest prospect. My task as Chief Magistrate of a place is first to render it as great, rich, and happy as possible. That is a direct obligation to the village, and an indirect one to the state. Not until I have satisfied this can I consider the more ideal side of my office, in my capacity as director of the Passion Play. But even there I have no authority to exercise any moral constraint in the sense of your noble, but fanatical and unpractical view. You must have had bitter experiences, Herr Freya, that you hold earthly blessings so cheap, and you must not expect to convert simple-hearted people, who enjoy their lives and their work, to these pessimistic views, as if we could serve our God only with a troubled mind. We must let a people, as well as a single person, retain its individuality. I want to rear no hypocrites, and I cannot force martyrdom on anyone in order to represent the Passion Play more naturally. Such things cannot be enforced. For that very reason you need people who will do them voluntarily, and though, thank heaven, they still exist in Ammergau, you have not such an oversupply that you need repel those who would fain increase the little band. Believe me, I have lived in closer communion with my home in the outside world than if I had remained here and been swayed by the various opposing streams of our brothers' active lives. Do you know where the idea of the Passion Play reveals itself in its full beauty? Not here in Ammergau, but in the world outside, as the gas does not give its light where it is prepared, but at a distance. Therefore, I think you ought not to measure a son of Ammergau's claim according to the time he has spent here, but according to the feeling he cherishes for Ammergau, and in this sense even the stranger may be a better representative of Ammergau than the natives of the village themselves. Yes, Freya, you are right, but one frank word deserves another. You have surprised and touched me, but although I am compelled to make many concessions to circumstances and the spirit of the times, which are in contradiction to my own views and involve me in conflicts with myself, of which you younger men probably have no idea, nothing in the world will induce me to be faithless to my principles in matters connected with the passion. Forgive the harsh words, Freya, but I must say it, your actions do not agree with the principles you have just uttered, and you cannot make this contradiction appear plausible to anyone. Who will credit the sincerity of your moral rigour after you have lived 9 years in an equivocal relation with the lady with whom you left us? Freya, a man who has done that can no longer personate the Christ. Freya stood silent as a statue. The burgomaster held out his hand. You see that I cannot act otherwise, do you not? Rather let the play die out utterly than a Christus on whom rests a stain. So long as you cannot vindicate yourself, Freya drew himself proudly, and that I will never do. You must renounce it. Yes, I must renounce it. Farewell, Herr Burgomaster. I bowed and left the room. He was paler than when he entered, but no sound betrayed the mortal anguish gnawing at his heart. The burgomaster, too, was painfully moved. His poor head was burning. He was sorry for Freya, but he could not do otherwise. Just as Freya reached the door, a man hurried in with a letter. Freya recognized the large, well-known chirography on the envelope as he passed. Countess Wildenau's handwriting. His brain reeled, and he was compelled to cling to the doorpost. The burgomaster noticed it. Please sit down a moment, Herr Freya. The letter is addressed to me, but will probably concern you. The man retired. Freya stood irresolute. The burgomaster read the contents of the note at a glance, then handed it to Freya. Thank you. I do not read letters which are not directed to me. Very well, then I must tell you. The Countess Wildnow, not having your address, requests me to take charge of a considerable sum of money which I am to invest for you in landed property or in stocks, according to my own judgment. You were not to hear of it until the gift had been legally attested. But I deem it my duty to inform you of this. Freya stood calmly before him, with a clear, steadfast gaze. I cannot be forced to accept a gift if I do not desire it, can I? Certainly not. Then please write to the Countess that I can accept neither gifts nor any kind of assistance from strangers, and that you, as well as I, will positively decline every attempt to show her generosity in this way." "Freya!" cried the burgomaster. "Will you not some day repent the pride which rejects a fortune thus flung into your lap? I am not proud. I beg my bread on my way here, Herr Burgomaster, and if there were no other means of livelihood, I would not be ashamed to accept the crust the poorest man would share with me. But from Countess Wildenau I will receive nothing. I would rather starve." The burgomaster sprang from his chair and approached him. His gaunt figure was trembling with emotion. His weary eyes flashed with enthusiasm. He extended his arms. "Freya, now you belong to us once more. Now you shall again play the Christus." Silently, in unutterable, mournful happiness, Freya sank upon the burgomaster's breast. His home was appeased. Chapter 34. A.D. Eisenberger's grave. It was high noon. The children were at school, the grown people had gone to their work. The village was silent, and no one stopped Freya as he hurried down the broad old Ostergasse, as the main street of the place was called, with its painted houses, toward the graveyard and the church. In the cemetery beside the church stands a simple monument with a bronze bust. An unlovely head with all sorts of lines, as if nature had intentionally given this soul an ugly husk, out of wrath that it was not to be hers, that she could not have as much power over it as over other dust-born mortals. For this soul belonged to heaven, earth had no share in it. But no matter how nature strove to disfigure it, its pure beauty shone through the physical covering so radiantly that even mortal eyes perceived only the beauty and overlooked the ugliness. This soul, which might also be called the soul of Ammergau, for it cherished the whole population of the village, lived for the people, gave them all and kept nothing for itself. This noble spirit, to whom the gratitude of the survivors, and they embraced the whole community, had created a monument, was Alois Eisenberger, the reformer of the Passion Play. It is a peculiar phenomenon that the people of Ammergau, in contrast to all others, are grateful only for intellectual gifts while they punish physical benefits with scorn. It offends their pride to be compelled to accept such trifling donations, and they cherish a suspicion that the donor may boast of his benefits. Whoever has not the self-denial to allay this suspicion by enduring all sorts of humiliations and affronts must not try to aid the Ammergau villagers. He who has done any good deed has accomplished nothing. Not until he has atoned for it, as though it were something evil, does he lend it its proper value and appease the offended pride of the recipient. This was the case with Eisenberger. He bore with saintly patience all the angularities and oddities of these strange characters, and they honoured him as a saint for it. He had the eye of genius for the natural talent, a heart for the sufferings, appreciation of the intellectual grandeur of these people, and he gave security for it. For no worldly honour, no bishopric which was offered could lure him away. What was it that outweighed everything with which church and government desired to honour him? Whoever stands in the quiet graveyard, fanned by the keen mountain air which brings from the village stray notes of a requiem that is being practised, surrounded by snow-clad mountain peaks gazing dreamily down on the little mound with its tiny cross, whoever gazes at the monument with its massive head, looking down upon the village from beneath a garland of fresh blue gentians, is overwhelmed by a mournful suspicion that here is concealed a secret in which a great intellect could find the satisfaction of its life. But it seems as if the key rested in Eisenberger's grave. To this grave Freya hastened. The first errand of the returned personator of Christ was to his author. The solitary grave lay forgotten by the world. It is a genuine work of faith and love when the author vanishes in his creation and leaves the honour to God. The whole world flocks to the Passion Play, but no one thinks of him who created for it the form which renders it available for the present time. It is the Oberammergau, not the Eisenberger Passion Play. He gave to the people of Ammergau not only his life and powers, but also that which a man is most loth to resign, his fame. He was one to whom earth could neither give anything nor take anything away. Therefore there were few who visited his grave in the little Ammergau churchyard. The grace and beauty of his grand and noble artist soul weave viewless garlands for it. Freya knelt in mute devotion beside the grave and prayed, not for himself, not even for him who was one of the host of the blessed, but to him, that he might sanctify his people and strengthen them with the sacred earnestness of their task. The longer he gazed at the iron yet gentle face, without seeing any change in the familiar features, which had once smiled so kindly at him when he uttered for the first time the words expelling the money, changes from the temple. The greater became his grief, as if the soul of his people had died with Dasenberger, as if Ammergau were only a graveyard, and he the sole mourner. O great noble soul, which had room for a world, and yet confined yourself to this narrow valley in order to create in it for us a world of love. Here lies your unworthy Christus moistening with his tears, the stone which no angel will roll away, that we may touch your transfigured body and say, "Give us thy spirit." Then, as if the metal mouth from which he implored an answer spoke with a brazen tongue, a bell echoed solemnly on the air. It was 12 o'clock. What the voice said could not be clothed in words. It had exhorted him when, in baptism, he was received into the covenant of him whom he was chosen to personate. It had consoled him when, a weeping boy, he followed his father's bier. It had threatened him when on Sunday with his schoolmates he pulled too violently at the bell rope. It had warned him when he had lingered high up on the peaks of the Koffel, or labour searching for alpine roses, or shouting exultantly, climbing after chamois. A smile flitted over his face as he thought of those days. And then that very bell had pealed resonantly, like a voice from another world, on the morning of the Passion, at the hour when he stood in the robes of the Christ behind the curtain with the others, to repeat the Lord's Prayer before the performance, the lofty fervent prayer that God would aid them, that all might go well for his honour. And again it had rung solemnly and sweetly, when he saw the beautiful woman praying at dawn in the garden, to the imaginary God which he was not. Then it seemed as if the bell burst. There was a shrill discord, a keen pang through brain and heart. Oh, memory! The past! Angel and fiend at once. Why do you conjure up your visions before one dedicated to the cross and to death? Why do you rouse the longing for what is irrevocably lost? Freya, groaning aloud, rested his damp brow against the cold stone, and the bronze bust, as if in pity, dropped a blue gentian from its garland on the penitent's head with a light touch, like a kiss from spirit lips. He took it and placed it in his pocket-book beside the child's fair curl, the only thing left him of all his vanished happiness. Then a hand was laid on his shoulder. "I thank you, that this was your first visit." The sexton stood before him. "I see that you have remained a true son of Ammergau. May God be with you." Freya's tears fell as he grasped the extended hand. "O noble blood of Dasenberger, thank you 1,000 times. And you, true son of Ammergau, nephew of our dead guardian angel, tell me in his name, will you receive me again in your midst and in the sacred work?" "I do not know what you have done and experienced," said the sexton, gazing at him with his large, loyal brown eyes. "I only saw you at a distance, praying beside my uncle's grave, and I thought that whoever did that could not be lost to us. By this dear grave I give you my hand. Will you work with me, live, and if need be die for the sacred will of this dead man, for our great task, as he cherished it in his heart?" "Yes, and amen. Then may God bless you." The two men looked earnestly and loyally into each other's eyes, and their hands clasped across the consecrated mound, as though taking an oath. Suddenly a woman, still beautiful, though somewhat beyond youth, appeared, moving with dignified cordiality toward Freya. "Good day, Herr Freya. Do you remember me?" she said in a quiet, musical voice, holding out her hand. "Mary," cried Freya, clasping it. "Anastasia, why should I not remember you? How do you do? But why do you call me Herr Freya? Have we become strangers? I thought I ought not to use the old form of speech. You have been away so long, and—" She paused an instant, looking at him with a pitying glance, as if to say, "and are so unhappy." For delicate natures respect misfortune more than rank and wealth, and the sufferer is sacred to them. The sexton looked at the clock. "I must go. The Vesper service begins again at 1 o'clock. Farewell till we meet again. Are you coming to the gymnasium this evening?" "Hardly. I am not very well, but we shall see each other soon. Are you married now?" "I have not asked." The sexton's face beamed with joy. "Yes, indeed, and well married. I have a good wife. You'll see her when you call on me." "A good wife? You are a happy man," said Freya in a low tone. "She has a great deal to do just now for the little one." "Ah, you have a child too. And such a beautiful one," added Anastasia. "A lovely little girl. She will be a Mary some day, but the sexton's wife is spoiling her. She hardly lets her out of her arms." "A good mother. That must be beautiful," said Freya with a strange expression, as if speaking in a dream. Then he pressed his friend's hand and turned to go. "Will you not bid me good-bye too?" asked Anastasia. The sexton sadly made a sign behind Freya's back, as if to say, "He has suffered sorely," and went into his church. Freya turned quickly. "Yes, I forgot, my Mary. I am rude, am I not?" "No, not rude, only unhappy," said Anastasia, while a pitying look rested upon his emaciated face. "Yes," replied Freya, lowering his lids as if he did not wish her to read in his eyes how unhappy. But she saw it nevertheless. For a time, the couple stood beside Dasenberger's grave. If he were only alive, he would know what would help you. Freya shook his head. If Christ himself should come from heaven, he could not help me, at least except through my faith in him. Joseph, will you not go home with me? Look down yonder, there is my house. It is very pretty, come with me. I shall consider it an honor if you will stop there. She led the way. Freya involuntarily followed, and they soon reached the little house. Then you no longer live with your brother, the burgomaster? Oh, no. After I grew older, I longed for rest and solitude, and at my sister-in-law's there is always so much bustle on account of the shop and the children. One hears so many painful things said. She paused in embarrassment. Then, opening the door into the little garden, they went to the rear of the house where they could sit on a bench undisturbed. What you heard was undoubtedly about me, and you could not endure it. You faithful soul, was not that the reason you left your relatives and lived alone? Said Freya, seating himself. Be frank. Were you not obliged to hear many things against me, till you at last doubted your old schoolmate? Yes, many evil things were said of you and the princess, but I never believed them. I do not know what happened, but whatever it was, you did nothing wrong. Mary, where did you obtain this confidence? Why, she answered smiling, surely I know my son, and what mother would distrust her child? Freya was deeply moved. Oh, you virgin mother, marvel of heaven, when in the outside world a mother abandoned her own child. Here, a child was maturing into a mother for me, a mother who would have compassion on the deserted one. Mary, pure maid, servant of God, how have I deserved this mercy? I always gave you a mother's love from the time we played together, and I have mourned for you as a mother all the 9 years. But I believed in you and hoped that you would some day return and close your old mother's eyes, and, though 20 years had passed, I should not have ceased to hope. I was right, and you have come. Ah, I would not let myself dream that I should ever play with you again in the passion, ever hold my Christus in my arms and support his weary head when he is taken down from the cross. That happiness transcends every other joy. True, I am an old maid now, and I wonder that they should let me take the part again. I am 39, you know, rather old for the Mary, yet I think it will be more natural, for Mary, too, was old when Christ was crucified. 39, and still unmarried. Such a beautiful creature. How did that happen, Mary? She smiled. Oh, I did not wish to marry anyone. I could not care for anyone as I did for my Christus. Great heaven, is this on my conscience too? A whole life wasted in silent hope, love, and fidelity to me, smiling and unreproachful. This soul might have been mine. This flower bloomed for me in the quiet home valley, and I left it to wither while searing heart and brain in the outside world. Mary, I will not believe that you have lost your life for my sake. You are still so beautiful, you will yet love and be happy at some good man's side. Oh no, what fancy have you taken into your head? That was over long ago, she answered gaily. I am a year older than you, too old for a woman. Look, when the hair is grey, one no longer thinks of marrying. And pushing back her thick brown hair from her temples, she showed beneath white locks, as white as snow. Oh, you have grown grey, perhaps for me, he said, deeply moved. Yes, maternal cares age one early. He flung himself in the grass before her, unable to speak. She passed her hand gently over his bowed head. Ah, if my poor son had only returned a happy man, how my heart would have rejoiced. If you had brought back a dear wife from the city, I would have helped her, done the rough work to which she was not accustomed. And if you had had a child, how I would have watched and tended it. If it had been a boy, we would have trained him to be the Christus, would we not? Then for 20 years he could have played it, your image. Freya started as though the words had pierced his inmost soul. She did not suspect it and went on. Then perhaps the Christus might have descended from child to grandchild in your family. That would have been beautiful. He made no reply. A low sob escaped his breast. I have often imagined such things during the long years when I sat alone through the winter evenings, but unfortunately it has not resulted so. You return a poor lonely man, and silver threads are shining in your hair too. When I look at them, I long to weep. What did those wicked strangers in the outside world do to you, my poor Joseph, that you are so pale and ill? It seems as if they had crucified you and taken you down from the cross ere life had wholly departed, and now you could neither live nor die, but moved about like one half dead. I fancy I can see your secret wounds, your poor heart pierced by the spear. Oh, my suffering child, rest your head once more on the knee of her who would give her heart's blood for you. She gently drew his head down and, placing one hand under it, like a soft cushion, lovingly stroked his forehead as if to wipe away the bloodstains of the crown of thorns, while tear after tear fell from her long lashes on her son, the son of a virgin mother. Silence reigned around them. There was a rustling sound above their heads as if the wind was blowing through palms and cedars. A weeping willow spread its boughs above them, and from the churchyard wall the milkwort nodded, a mute greeting from Golgotha. Chapter 35. The watchword. While the lost son of Amergau was quietly and sadly permitting the miracle of his home to produce its effect upon him, and rising from one revelation to another along the steep path which again led him to the cross, the Countess was languishing in the oppressive atmosphere of the capital and its relations. 3 days had passed since the parting from Freya, but she scarcely knew it. She lived behind her closed curtains, and in the evenings sat in the light of lamps, subdued by opalescent shades, as if in a never-changing white night, in which there could be neither dusk nor dawn. And it was the same in her soul. Reason, cold, joyless reason, with its calm, monotonous light, now ruled her. She had exhausted all the forces of grief in those farewell hours. For grief, too, is a force which can be exhausted, and then the soul will rest in indifference. Everything was now the same to her. The sacrifice and the cost of the sacrifice. What did the world contain that was worth trouble and anxiety? Nothing. Everything she had hoped for on earth had proved false and treacherous. Life had kept its promise to her in nothing. There was no happiness, only he who had no desires was happy. A happiness no better than death. And she had not even reached that stage. She still wanted so many things, honour, power, beauty and luxury, which only wealth procures. And therefore this also. Now she flung herself into the arms of beauty, seeking in it the divine, and the man who offered her his hand in aid would understand how to obtain for her, with taste and care, the last thing she expected from life. Pleasure. Civilization had claimed her again. She was the woman of the century, a product of civilization. She desired nothing more. A marriage of convenience with a clever, aristocratic man, with whom she would become a patron of art and learning, a life of amusement and pleasurable occupation, she now regarded as the normal one, and the only one to be desired. While Freya, among his own people, was returning to primitiveness and simplicity, she was constantly departing farther from it, repelled and terrified by the phenomena with which nature, battling for her eternal rights, confronted her. For nature is a tender mother only to him who deals honestly with her. Woe betide him who would trifle with her. She shows him her terrible earnestness. Only despise reason and learning, the highest powers of mankind. How often the Mephistopheles within her soul had jeeringly cried, yes, he was right. She was punished for having despised and misunderstood the value of the work of civilization at which mankind had toiled for years. She would atone for it. She had turned in a circle. The wheel had almost crushed her, but at least she was glad to have reached the same spot whence she started 10 years ago. At least so she believed. In this mood, the Duke found her on his return from Frankenberg. Good news, the danger is over. The old pastor was prudent enough to die with the secret, he cried, radiant with joy, as he entered. Nothing was to be found. There is nothing in the church record. The Wildernaus have no proof, and can do nothing unless Herr Freya plays us a trick with the marriage certificate. That anxiety is needless, replied the Countess, taking from her writing table the little package containing Freya's farewell note, the marriage certificate, and the account book. There, read it. Her face wore a strange expression as she handed it to him, a look as if she were accusing him of having tempted her to murder an innocent person. She was pale, and there was something hostile, reproachful in her attitude. The Duke glanced through the papers. "This is strange," he said very gravely. "Is the man so great or so small?" "So great," she murmured under her breath. I should not have expected it of him. Is this no farce? Has he really gone?" "Yes." "And here is something else." She gave him the burgomaster's letter. "This is the answer I received today to my offer to provide for Freya's future. If this is really greatness, then—" The prince drew a long breath as if he could not find the right word. "Then, I don't know whether we have done right." The countess felt as if a thunderbolt had struck her. "You say that? You?" The Duke rose and paced up and down the room. "I always tell the truth. If this man was capable of such an act, then—" I reproached myself, for he deserved better treatment than to be flung overboard in this way, and we have incurred a great responsibility. "Good heavens, and you say this now when it is too late," groaned the unhappy woman. "Be calm. The fault is mine, not yours. I will assume the whole responsibility, but it oppresses me the more heavily because ever since I went to Frankenberg I have been haunted by the question whether this was really necessary. My object was first of all to save you. In this respect I have nothing for which to reproach myself. But I overestimated your danger and undervalued Freya. I did not know him. Now that I do, my motive dissolves into nothing." He cast another glance at Freya's farewell note and shook his head. "It is hard to understand. What must it have cost thus at one blow to resign everything that was dear, give up without conditions the papers which at least would have made him a rich man, and all without one complaint, without any boastfulness, simply, naturally. Madeleine, it is overwhelming, it is shameful to us." The countess covered her face. Both remained silent a long time. The Duke still gazed at the letter. Then, resting his head on his hand and looking fixedly into vacancy, he said, "There is a constraining power about this man, which draws us all into its spell and compels us not to fall behind him in generosity. But how is this to be done? He cannot be reached by ordinary means. I am beginning now to understand what bound you to him, and unfortunately I must admit that, with the knowledge, my guilt increases. My justification lay only in the misunderstanding of what now forces itself upon me as an undeniable fact, that Freya was not so unworthy of you, Madeleine, as I believed." He read the inscription on the little bank book, "To keep the graves of my dear ones," and was silent for a time as if something choked his utterance. How he must have suffered. "When I think how I love you, though you have never been mine, and he once called you his, resigned you and went away, with death in his heart. Oh, you women! Madeleine, how could you do this in cold blood, if it had been for love of me? But that illusion vanished long ago." "Condemned? Condemned by you!" moaned the Countess in terror. "I do not condemn you, Madeleine. I only marvel that you could do it, if you knew the man as he is." "I did not know him in this guise," said the Countess proudly. "But I will not be less honest than you, Duke. I am not sure that I could have done it, had I known him as I do now." The Duke passed his handkerchief across his brow, which was already somewhat bald. "One thing is certain, we owe the man some reparation. Something must be done. What shall we do? He will refuse anything we offer, though it were myself. That is evident from the burgomaster's letter." She closed her eyes to keep back the tears. "All is vain. He can never forgive me. No, he certainly cannot do that. But the man is worthy of having us fulfill the only wish he has expressed to you, and that is to defer our marriage until the first anguish of his grief has had time to pass away." The Countess drew a long breath, as if relieved of a heavy burden. "Duke, that is generous and noble. If you had been legally wedded and were obliged to be legally divorced, we could not be united in less than a year. Let us show the poor man the honour of regarding him as your lawfully wedded husband and pay him the same consideration as if he were. That is all we can do for him at present, and I shall make it a point of honour to atone, by this sacrifice, in some degree for the heavy responsibility which is undeniably mine, and which, as an honest man, I neither can nor desire to conceal from myself." He went to her and held out his hand. "I see by your radiant eyes, Countess, that this does not cost you the sacrifice which it does me. I will not pretend to be more unselfish than I am, for I hope by means of it to gain in your esteem what I lose in happiness by this time of delay." He kissed her hand with a sorrowful expression which she had never seen in him before. Permit me to take leave of you for today. I have an engagement with Prince Hohenheim. Tomorrow we will discuss the matter farther. Bonsoir. The Countess was alone. An engagement with Prince Hohenheim. When had an engagement with anyone taken precedence of her? Duke Emil was using pretexts. She could not deceive herself. He was not really cold, but chilled. What a terrible reproach to her. What neither time nor any of her great or trivial errors had accomplished. What had not happened even when she preferred a poor low-born man to the rich noble, occurred now when she rejected the former for the latter. Many a person does not realize the strength of his own moral power, and how it will baffle the most crafty calculation. Every tragical result of a sin is merely the vengeance of these moral forces which the criminal had undervalued when he planned the deed. This was the case with the Duke. He had advised a breach with Freya, advised it with the unselfish intention of saving her. But when the Countess followed his advice, and he saw by Freya's conduct what a heart she had broken, he could not instantly love the woman who had been cruel enough to do an act which he could not pardon himself for having counselled. Madeleine Wildenau suspected this, though not to its full extent. The Duke was far too chivalrous to think for a moment of breaking his plighted troth, or letting her believe that he repented it. But the delay which he proposed as an atonement to the man whom they had injured said enough. Must all abandon her? Every bridge on which she stepped break? Had she lost by her act even the man of whom she was sure, surer than of anything else in the world? How terrible, then, this deed must have been. Madeleine von Wildenau blushed for herself. Yet as there are certain traits in feminine nature which are the last a woman gives up, she now hated Freya, hated him from a spirit of contradiction to the Duke, who espoused his cause. And as the feminine nature desires above all things else that which is denied, she now longed to bind the Duke again, because she felt the danger of losing him. The fugitive must be stopped. The sport might perhaps lend her charmless, wretched life a certain interest. An unsatisfactory one, it is true, for even if she won him again, what then? What would she have in him? Could he be anything more to her than a pleasant companion who would restore her lost power and position? She glanced at her mirror. It showed her a woman of 38, rouged to seem 10 years younger, but beneath this rouge were haggard cheeks. She could not conceal from herself that art would not suffice much longer. She had faded, her life was drawing toward evening, age spared no one. But when she no longer possessed youth and beauty, when the time came that only the moral value of existence remained, what would she have then? To what could she look back? In what find satisfaction, peace, society? It was always the same, with its good and evil qualities. To one who entered into an ethical relation with it, it contained, besides its apparent superficiality, boundless treasures and resources. The snow is hard enough to bear, people say in the mountains, when, in the early spring, the loose masses have melted into a firm crust. Thus, under the various streams, now cold, now warm, the surface of society melts and forms that smooth, icy rind of form over which the light foot glides carelessly, unconscious that beneath the thin surface are hidden depths in which the philosopher and psychologist find material enough for the study of a whole life. But when everything which could serve the purposes of amusement was exhausted, the Countess' interest in society also failed. Once before she had felt a loathing for it, when she was younger than now. How would it be when she was an old woman? The arts? Already their spell had been broken, and she had fled to nature, because she could no longer believe in their beautiful lies. The sciences? They were least suited to afford pleasure. Had she not grown so weary of her amateur toying with their serious investigations that she fled, longing for a revelation, to the childish miracles of Oberammergau? She was again, after the lapse of 10 years, standing in the self-same spot, seeking her God as in the days when she fancied she had found his footprints. The trace proved delusive, and must she now begin again where 10 years before she ended in weariness and discontent? Must she, who imagined that she had embraced the true essence, return to searching, doubting? No, the flower cannot go back into the closed bud. The feeling which caused the disappointment impelled onward to truth. Love for God had once unfolded, and though the object proved deceptive, the feeling was true and struggled to find its goal as persistently as the flower seeks the sun after it has long vanished behind clouds. But had she missed her way because she thought she had reached the goal too soon? She had followed the trace no longer, but left it in anger, discouragement at the first disappointment. What if the path which led her to Ammergau was the right one, and the guide along it had been sent by God? What if she had turned from the path because it was too long and toilsome, rejected the guide because he did not instantly bring God near to her impatient heart, and she must henceforth wander aimlessly without consolation or hope? And when the day of final settlement came, what imperishable goods would she possess? When the hour arrived which no mortal can escape, what could aid her in the last terror, save the consciousness of dwelling in the love of God, of going out of love to love, out of longing to fulfillment? She had rejected love, she had turned back in the path of longing and contented herself with earthly joys. And when she left the world she would have nothing, for the soul which does not seek will not find. A life which has not fulfilled its moral task is not finished, only broken off. Death to it is merely destruction, not completion. The miserable woman flung herself down before the mirror, which showed her the transitoriness of everything earthly, and, for the first time in her life, looked the last question in the face and read no answer save despair. "Help my weakness, O God," she pleaded. "Help me upward to thee. Show me the way, send me an angel, or write thy will on the border of the clouds. Work a miracle, O Lord, for a despairing soul." Thus she awaited the announcement of the divine will in flaming characters and angel tongues, and did not notice that a poor little banished household sprite was standing beside her, gazing beseechingly at her with tearful eyes because it had the word which would aid her, the watchword which she could find nowhere, only a simple phrase, the fulfillment of duty. Yet because it was as simple and unassuming as the genius which brought it, it remained unheeded by the proud, vain woman who, in her arrogance, spite of the humiliations she had endured, imagined that her salvation needed a messenger from heaven of apocalyptic form and power. Chapter 36. Memories. Amid conflicts such as those just described, the Countess lived, passing from one stage of development to another and unconsciously growing older, mentally maturing. Several weeks had now passed since her parting with Freya, but the apathy with which, from that hour, she had regarded all external things still remained. She left the Duke to arrange the affair with the Wildenhaus, which, a short time ago, she had considered of sufficient importance to sacrifice Freya. She admired the Duke's tact and cleverness, but it seemed as if he were not acting for her, but for some other person. When he brought the news that the Wildenhaus, owing to the obstinacy of the witness Martin, had given up their plan of a legal prosecution on the ground of Josepha's deposition and were ready for an amicable settlement, she did not rejoice over anything save the old servant's fidelity. Everything else she accepted as a just recompense of fate in return for an unwarrantably high price she had paid. She was not annoyed because obliged to pay those whom she had injured a sum so large as considerably to lessen her income. She did not care for the result. Her father was now a dying man, and the vast sums he had used were again at her disposal. After all, what did it matter? If she married the Duke in a year, she would be obliged to give up the whole property. But need she marry him if the Wildenhaus could prove nothing against her? She sank into a dull reverie. But when the Duke mentioned the cousin's desire for the little hunting castle, life suddenly woke in her again. "Never, never!" she cried, while a burning blush crimsoned her face. "Rather all my possessions than that." A flood of tears suddenly dissolved her unnatural torpor. "But, dearest Madeline, you will never live there again," said the Duke consolingly. "No, neither I nor any living mortal will enter it again. But, Duke, must I say it? There sleeps my child, there sleeps the dream of my heart, it is the mausoleum of my love. No, leave me that. No stranger's foot must desecrate it. I will do anything, will give the Wildenhaus twice, thrice as much. They may choose any of my estates, only not that one, and even if I marry you, when I must resign everything, I will ask you to buy it from my cousins, and you will not refuse my first request." The prince gazed at her long and earnestly. For the first time a ray of the old love shone in his eyes. "Do you know that I have never seen you so beautiful as at this moment? Now your own soul looks out from your eyes. Now I absolve you from everything. Forgive me. I was mistaken in you, but this impulse teaches me that you are still yourself. It does me good. Oh, Duke! Oh, Duke! There is little merit, when the living was not allowed his rightful place, to secure it to the dead. Well, it is at least an act of atonement. Madeline, there cannot be more joy in heaven over the sinner who repents than I felt just now at your words. Yes, my poor friend, you shall keep the scene of your happiness and your grief untouched. I will assure you of it, and will arrange it with the Wildenhaus. Duke, oh, you are the best, the noblest of men," she exclaimed, smiling through her tears. "Do you know that I love you as I never did before? I thought it perfectly natural that you could not love me as you saw me during those days. I felt it, though you did not intend to let me see it." She had not meant to assume it, but these words expressed the charming artlessness which had formerly rendered her so irresistible, and the longer the Duke had missed it, the less he was armed against the spell. "Madeleine," he held out his arms. "And she... did she know how it happened? Was it gratitude? The wish to make at least one person happy?" She threw herself on his breast. For the first time he held her in his embrace. Surely she was his betrothed bride. But she had not thought of what happened now. The Duke's lips sought hers. She could not resist like a girl of 16. He would have considered it foolish coquetry. So she was forced to submit. "Hony soit qui mal y pence," he murmured, kissing her brow, her hair, and her lips. But when she felt his lips press hers, it suddenly seemed as though someone was saying dose beside her. "You!" It was the word Freya, always uttered when he embraced her, as though he knew of nothing better or higher than that one word, in which he expressed the whole strength of his emotion. "You, you," echoed constantly in her ears with that sweet, wild fervour which seemed to threaten. "The next instant you will be consumed in my ardour." Again he stood before her with his dark, flaming eyes and the overwhelming earnestness of a mighty passion, which shadowed his pale brow as the approaching thunderstorm clouded the snow-clad peaks of his mountains. And she compared it with the light, easy tenderness, the hony soit qui mal y pence of the trained squire of dames who was pressing his first kiss upon her lips, and she loathed the stranger. She released herself with a sudden movement, approached the window and looked out. As she gazed, she fancied she saw the dark figure of the deserted one, illumined by the crimson glare of the forest conflagration, holding out his hand with a divinely royal gesture to raise and shelter her on his breast. Once more she beheld him gaze calmly down at the charred timber and heard him say, smiling, "The wood was mine." Then she beheld in the distant east a sultry room, shaded by gay awnings, surrounded by rustling palm trees which drew their sustenance from the soil on which the Redeemer's blood once flowed. He sat beside the bed of the mother of a newborn child, whispering sweet, earnest words, and the mother was she herself. The babe was his. Then she beheld this same man kneeling by the coffin of a child, the rigid, death-white face buried under his raven locks. It was the child born on the consecrated soil of the burning east, which she had left to pine in the cold breath of the western winter. She withdrew from it the mother heart, in which the tender plant of the south might have gained warmth. She had left that father's child to die. Yet he did not complain, uttered no reproach. He remained silent. She saw him become more and more solitary and silent. The manly beauty wasted, his strength failed. At last she saw him noiselessly cross the carpeted floor of this very room and close the door behind him, never to return. No, it could not be. All that had happened was false. Nothing was true save that he was the father of her child, her husband, and no one else could ever be that, even though she was separated from him forever. "Duke," she cried imploringly, "leave me to myself. I do not understand my own feelings. I feel as if arraigned before the judgment seat of God. Let me take counsel with my own heart. Forgive me. I am a variable, capricious woman. One mood today and another tomorrow. Have patience with me, I entreat you." The Duke looked gravely at her and answered, nodding, "I understand. Or rather, I am afraid to understand. Duke, I am not suited to marry. Let the elderly woman go her way alone. I believe I can never again be happy. I long only for rest and solitude. You need rest and composure. I will give you time and wait your decision, which can now be absolutely untrammelled, since your business affairs are settled and the peril is over. Do not be angry with me, Duke, and do not misunderstand me. Oh, heaven! You might think that I had only given my promise in the dread of poverty and disgrace, and now that the peril was past, repented." The Duke hesitated a moment. Then he said in a low, firm tone, "Surely you know that I am the man of sober reason, who is surprised by nothing. Taut comprendris et taut pardona, so act without regard to me, as your own feeling dictates." He held out his hand. "There was a time when I seriously believed that we might be happy together. That is now past. You will destroy no illusion if you assert the contrary." "Perhaps not even a sincere desire of the heart," replied the Countess, smiling. The Duke became deeply earnest. "That suggestion is out of place here. Am I to wound you from gallantry, and increase the measure of your self-reproaches by showing you that I suffer? Or tell a falsehood to lessen your responsibility? We will let all that rest. If you want me, send for me. Meanwhile, as your faithful attorney, I will arrange the matter of the hunting castle. Duke, how petty I am in your presence, how noble you are. That is saying far too much, Countess. I am content, if you can bear me witness that at least I have not made myself ridiculous. He left the room, cold, courteous, stoical as ever. Madeleine von Wildenau hurried to the window and flung it open. Pour in, light and air, mighty consolers. Ah, now I breathe, I live again. Once more she could freely show her face, had no occasion to conceal herself. The danger of a scandal was over, thanks to the lack of proof. She need no longer shun the Wildenaus. Old Martin was faithful, and her husband, the most dangerous witness, had gone, disappeared. Now she had nothing more to dread. She was free, mistress of her fortune, mistress of her will. She breathed once more as if new-born. Liberty, yes, this was happiness. She believed that she had found it at last, and she would enjoy it. She need not reproach herself for breaking her troth to the prince. He had told her so. If thereby she could appease the avenging spirits of her deed to Freya, they must have the sacrifice. True, to be reigning duchess of a country was a lofty position, but could she purchase it at the cost of being the wife of a man whom she did not love? Why not? Was she a child? A foolish girl? A crown was at stake. And should she allow sentimental scruples to force her to sacrifice it to the memory of an irrevocably lost happiness? She shook her head, as if she wanted to shake off a bandage. She was ill from the long days spent in darkness and confinement like a criminal. That was the cause of these whims. Up and out into the open air, where she would again find healthy blood and healthy thoughts. She rang the bell. A new servant appeared. My arrival can now be announced. Tell Martin to bring the carriage round. I will go to drive. Very well, Your Highness. She seemed to have escaped from a ban. She had never known liberty. Until she married the Count von Wildenau, she had been under the control of a governess. Then, in her marriage with the self-willed old man, she was a slave, and she had scarcely been a widow ere she forged new fetters for herself. Now, for the first time, she could taste liberty. The decision was not pressing. The cool stoic who had waited so long would not lose patience at the last moment, so she could still do what she would. So the heart, struggling against the unloved husband, deceived the ambitious, calculating reason which aspired to a crown. The carriage drove up. It was delightful to hear a pair of spirited horses stamping before a handsome equipage, to be assisted to enter by a liveried servant, and to be able to say, "This is yours once more." The only shadow which disturbed her was that on Martin's face, a shadow resting there since she had last visited her castle of the Sleeping Beauty. She well knew for whom the old man was grieving. It was a perpetual reproach, and she avoided talking with him from a certain sense of diffidence. She could justify herself to the keen intelligence of the Duke, to the simplicity of this plain man. She could not, she felt it. It was a delightful May evening. A sea of warm air and spring perfumes surrounded her, and crowds thronged the streets, enjoying the evening, after their toilsome work, as if they had just waked from their winter sleep. On the corners groups paused before huge placards which they eagerly studied, one pushing another away. What could it be? Then old Martin, as if intentionally, drove close to the sidewalk, where the people stood in line out to the street before those posters. There was a little movement in the throng. People turned to look at the splendid equipage, thus leaving the placard exposed. The Countess read it, the blood congealed in her veins. There, in large letters, stood the words, Oberammergau, Passion Play. What did it mean? She leaned back in the carriage, feeling as if she must shriek aloud with homesickness, with agonized longing for those vanished days of a great blissful delusion. Again she beheld the marvellous play. Again the divine sufferer appeared to the world. The mere name on that wretched placard was already exerting its spell, for the pedestrians, pausing on their errands, stopped before it by hundreds, as if they had never read the words Passion Play before. And the man who helped create this miracle, to which a world was again devoutly pilgrimaging, had been clasped in her arms, had loved her, been loyally devoted to her alone, and she had disdained him. Now he was again bringing the salvation of the divine word and miracle. She alone was shut out. She had forfeited it by her own fault. She was, as in his wonderful gift of divination he had once said, one of the foolish virgins who had burnt her oil, and now the heavenly bridegroom was coming. but she stood alone in the darkness while the others were revelling at the banquet. The rattle of wheels and the trampling of the crowds about her were deafening, and it was fortunate, for, in the confused uproar, the cry which escaped the tortured heart of the proud lady in the coroneted carriage died away unheard. Lilacs and roses, why do you send forth so intoxicating a fragrance? Why do you still bloom? Can you have the heart to smile at a world in which there is such anguish? But lilacs, roses, and a beautiful May. Sun laughed on. The world was devoutly preparing for the great pilgrimage to Oberammergau. She only was exiled and returned to her stone palace, alone, hopeless, with infinite desolation in her heart. A note from the Duke awaited her. He took his leave for a few weeks in order to give her time to understand her own heart clearly. Now she was utterly alone. Chapter 37. The measure ISFULL. From that day, the Countess showed an unwanted degree of interest in the newspapers. The first question when she waked in the morning was for the papers, but the maid noticed that she opened only the pages containing the reports from Oberammergau. "Your Highness seems to be very much interested in the Passion Play," the woman ventured to remark. The Countess blushed, and her yes was so curt and repellent that the maid was alarmed at her own presumption. One thing, however, was certain. Her mistress, after reading these reports, always looked pale and worn. And in truth the unhappy woman, while reading the descriptions of this year's performances, felt as if she were drinking a cup of wormwood drop by drop. Freya's name was echoing throughout the world. Not only did the daily press occupy itself with him, but grave men, aesthetes of high rank, found his acting so interesting that they wrote pamphlets about it and made it the subject of scientific treatises. The Countess read them all. Freya was described as the type in which art, nature, and religion joined hands in the utmost harmony. As he himself stands above the laws of theatrical routine, he raises us far above what we term stage effect, as it were into a loftier sphere. He does not act, he is the Christ. The power of his glance, the spirituality of the whole figure, and an indefinable spell of the noblest sorrow which pervades his whole person, are things which cannot be counterfeited, which are no play, but truth. We believe what he says, because we feel that this man's soul does not belong to this world, that its own individual life has entered into his part. Because he thinks, feels, and lives not as Joseph Freya, but as the Christus, is the source of the impression which borders upon the supernatural. Madeleine von Wildenau had just read these words which cut her to the heart. Ah, when strangers, critics, men said such things, surely she had no cause to be ashamed. Who would reproach her, a weak, enthusiastic woman, for yielding to this spell? Surely no one. Rather she would be blamed for not having arrested the charm, for having, with a profane hand, destroyed the marvel that approached her, favouring her above the thousands who gazed at it in devout reverence. She leaned her head on her hand and gazed mournfully out of the window at which she sat. They had now been playing 6 weeks in Oberammergau. It was June. The gardens of the opposite palace were in their fullest leafage, and the birds singing in the trees lured her out. Her eyes followed a little swallow flying toward the mountains. "Oh, mountain air and blue gentians, earthly paradise," she sighed. What was she doing here in the hot city when all were flying to the mountains? She saw no society, and the Duke had gone away. She too ought to have left long before. But where should she go? She could not visit Oberammergau, and she cared for no other spot. It seemed as though the whole world contained no other place of abode than this one village with its gay little houses and low windows. As if in all the world there were no mountains, and no mountain air save in Ammergau. A few burning tears ran down her cheeks. Doubtless there was mountain air. There were mountain peaks higher, more beautiful than in Ammergau. But nowhere else could be found the same capacity for enjoying the magnificence of nature. Everywhere there is a church, a religion, but nowhere so religious an atmosphere as there. Oh, my lost paradise, my soul greets you with all the anguish of the exiled mother of my sex and my sin, she sighed. And yet, what was Eve's sin to hers? Eve at least atoned in love and faith with the man whom she tempted to sin. Therefore God could forgive her and send to the race which sprung from her fall a messenger of reconciliation. Eve was a wife and a mother. But she, what was she? Not even that. She had abandoned her husband and lived in splendour and luxury while he grieved alone. She had given him only one child, and even to that had acted no mother's part, and finally had thrust him out into poverty and sorrow, and led a life of wealth and leisure, while he earned his bread by the sweat of his brow. No, the mother of sin was a martyr compared to her, a martyr to the nature which she denied, and therefore she was shut out from the bond of peace and pity which Eve's atonement secured. Someone knocked. The Countess started from her reverie. The servant announced that His Highness' nurses had sent for her. They thought death was near. "I will come at once," she answered. The prince lived near the Wildnow Palace, and she reached him in a few minutes. The sick man's mind was clearer than it had been for several months. The watery effusions in the brain which had clouded his consciousness had been temporarily absorbed, and he could control his thoughts. For the first time he held out his hand to his daughter. "Are you there, my child?" It touched her strangely, and she knelt by his side. "Yes, father." He stroked her hair with a kindly, though dull expression. "Are you well?" "In body, yes, papa. I thank you. Are you happy?" The Countess, who had never in her life perceived any token of paternal affection in his manner, was deeply moved by this first sign of affection in the hour of parting. She strove to find some soothing reply, which would not be false and yet satisfy his feeble reasoning powers, but he had again forgotten the question. "Are you married?" he asked again, as if he had been absent a long time, and saw his daughter today for the first time. The nurses withdrew into the next room. The father and daughter were alone. Meantime his memory seemed to be following some clue. "Where is your husband? Which one?" asked the Countess, greatly agitated. "Wildenau? No, the other one. Let him come." He put out his hand gropingly, as if he expected someone to clasp it. "Say farewell, father," sobbed the Countess, laying the seeking hand gently back on the coverlet. "He cannot bid you farewell. He is not here." "Why not? I should have been glad to see him. Son-in-law, grandson, no one here." "Father, poor father." The Countess could say no more. Laying her head on the side of her father's bed, she wept bitterly. Murmured the invalid, and the glance of intelligence suddenly flashed from his dull eyes at his daughter. "My child, are you weeping?" He reflected a short time. Then his mind seemed to grow clear again. "Oh, yes, no one must know. Foolish weaknesses. Tell him I sincerely ask his pardon. He must forgive me. Prejudiced old. I am very sorry. Can't you send for him?" "Oh, papa, I would gladly bring him, but it is too late. He has gone away." "Ah, then I shall not see him again. I am near my end." The Countess could not speak, but pressed her lips to her father's cold hand. "Don't grieve. You will lose nothing in me. Be happy. I spent a great deal of money for you. Women, gaming, dinners. What value are they all?" He made a gesture of loathing. "What are they now?" A chill ran through his veins, and his breath grew short and laboured. "I'm curious to see how it looks up there," he pondered for a time. "If you knew of any sensible pastor, you might send for him. Such men often do know something." "Certainly, father." The Countess hurried into the next room and ordered a priest to be sent for to give extreme unction. "You wish to confess and take the communion too, do you not, papa?" "Why, yes. One doesn't wish to take the old rubbish when starting on the great journey. We don't carry our soiled linen with us when we travel. I have much on my conscience, Magdalena, my child, most of all, sins committed against you." "And bear your foolish old father ill will for it?" "No, father, I swear it by the memory of this hour." "And your husband?" He shook his head. "He is not here. It's a pity." Then he said no more, but lay quietly, absorbed in his own thoughts till the priest came. Madeline withdrew during the confession. What was passing in her mind during that hour she herself could not understand. She only knew that her father's inquiry in his dying hour for his despised, disowned son-in-law was the keenest reproach which had been addressed to her. The sacred ceremony was over, and the priest had left the house. The sick man lay with a calm, pleasant expression on his face, which had never rested there before. Madeline sat down by the bed and took his hand. He gratefully returned her gentle pressure. "How do you feel, dear father?" she asked gently. "Very comfortable, dear child. Have you made your peace with God?" "I hope so, my child, so far as he will be gracious to an old sinner like me." He raised his eyes with an earnest, trustful look. Then a long, agonizing death struggle came on. But he held his daughter's hand firmly in his own, and she spent the whole night at his bedside without stirring, resolute and faithful. The first fulfillment of duty in her whole life. The struggle continued until the next noon ere the daughter could close her father's eyes. A number of pressing business matters were now to be arranged, which detained her in the house of mourning until the evening, and made her sorely miss her thoughtful friend, the Duke. At last, at 9 o'clock, she returned to her palace, wearied almost unto death. The footman handed her a card. "The gentleman has been here twice today, and wished to see your Highness on very urgent business. He was going to leave by the last train, but decided to stay in order to see you. He will try again after 9 o'clock. The Countess carried the card to the gas jet and read, "Ludwig Gross, drawing teacher." Her hand trembled so violently that she almost dropped it. "When the gentleman comes, admit him." She was obliged to cling to the balustrade as she went upstairs. She was so giddy. Scarcely had she reached her boudoir when she heard the lower bell ring. Then footsteps, a familiar voice. Someone knocked as he had done 10 years ago in the Gross house. But the man whom he then brought, nothing would ever bring again. She did not speak. Her voice failed. But she opened the door herself. Ludwig Gross stood before her. Both gazed at each other a long time in silence. Both were struggling for composure and for words, and from the cheeks of both every drop of blood had vanished. The Countess held out her hand, but he did not seem to see it. She pointed to a chair and said in a hollow tone, "Sit down," at the same time sinking upon a divan opposite. "I will not disturb you long, your Highness," Ludwig answered, seating himself a long distance off. "If you disturbed me, I should not have received you." Ludwig felt the reproof conveyed in the words for the hostility of his manner, but he could not help it. "Perhaps your Highness remembers a certain Freya, Herr Gross. That question is an insult, but I admit that, from your standpoint, you have a right to ask it. At any rate, Freya did not commission you to do so." "No, Countess, for he does not know that I am here. If he did, he would have prevented it. I beg your pardon if I perform my mission somewhat clumsily. I know it is unseemly to meddle with relations of which one is ignorant, for Freya's reserve allowed me no insight into these. But here there is danger in delay, and where a human life is at stake, every other consideration must be silent. I have never been able to learn any particulars from Freya. I only know that he was away 9 years, as it was rumoured with you, and that he returned a beggar. That, Herr Gross, is no fault of mine." "Not that, Countess, but it must be your fault alone which has caused relations so unnatural that Freya was ashamed to accept from you even the well-earned payment for his labour. You are right there, Herr Gross, and that would be the least, Countess. But he has returned, not only a beggar, but a lost man." "Ludwig, yes, Countess. That is the reason I determined, after consulting with the burgomaster, to come here and talk with you, if you will allow it." "Speak, for heaven's sake, what has befallen him. Freya is ill, Countess." "But how can that be? He is acting the Christus every week and delighting the world." "Yes, that is just it. He acts as a candle burns down while it shines. It is no longer the phosphorescence of genius. It is a light which feeds on his own life and consumes it. Merciful God, and he wishes to die. That is unmistakable. That is why it is so hard to aid him. He will heed no counsel, follow no advice of the physician, do nothing which might benefit him. Now matters have gone so far that the doctor told us yesterday he might fall dead upon the stage at any hour, and we ought not to allow him to go on playing. But he cannot be prevented. He desires nothing more than death." "What is the matter?" asked the pale lips of the Countess. "A severe case of heart disease, Countess, which might be arrested for several years by means of careful nursing, perfect rest, and strengthening food. But he has no means to obtain the better nourishment his condition requires, because he is too proud to be a burden on anyone, and he lacks the ease of mind necessary to relieve his heart. Nursing is out of the question. He occupies, having given his own home to the poor when he left Oberammergau, as you know, a miserable, damp room in a wretched tavern just outside the village, and wanders about the mountains day and night. Of course, speedy death is inevitable, hastened, moreover, by the exertions demanded by his part." Ludwig Gross rose. "I do not know how you estimate the value of a poor man's life, Countess," he said bitterly. "I have merely done my duty by informing you of my friend's condition. The rest I must leave to you." "Great heaven, what shall I do? He rejects everything I offer. Perhaps you do not know that I gave him a fortune and he refused it." Ludwig Gross fixed an annihilating glance upon her. "If you know no other way of rendering aid here save by money, I have nothing more to say." He bowed slightly and left the room without waiting for an answer. "Ludwig," she called, "hear me." He had gone. He was right. Did she deserve anything better? No, no! She stood in the middle of the room a moment as if dazed. Her heart throbbed almost to bursting. Has it gone so far? I have left the man from whose lips I drew the last breath of life to starve and languish. I allowed the heart on which I have so often rested to pine within dark, gloomy walls, bleed and break in silent suffering. Murderous, did you hear it? He is lost, through your sin. O God, where is the crime which I have not committed? Where is there a more miserable creature? I have murdered the most innocent, misunderstood the noblest, repulsed the most faithful, abused the most sacred, and for what? She sank prostrate. The measure was full, was running over. The angel with the cup of wormwood had overtaken her, as Freya had prophesied, and was holding to her lips the bitter chalice of her own guilt, which she must drain, drop by drop. But now this guilt had matured, grown to its full size, and stood before her, grinning at her with the jeer of madness. Wings, O God, lend me wings. While I am doubting and despairing here, it may be too late. The terrible thing may have happened. He may have died, unreconciled, with the awful reproach in his heart. Wings, wings, O God! She started up and flew to the bell with the speed of thought. Send for the head groom at once. Then she hurried into the chamber, where the maid was arranging her garments for the night. Pack as quickly as possible whatever I shall need for a journey of 2 or 3 days, or weeks. I don't know myself. Evening or street costumes? Asked the maid, startled by her mistress' appearance. Street dresses. Meantime the head groom had come. She hastened into the boudoir. Have relays of horses saddled and sent forward at once. It is after 10 o'clock. There is no train to Wilhelmine, but I must reach Oberammergau tonight. Martin is to drive. Send on 4 relays. I will give you 4 hours' start. The men must be off within 10 minutes. I will go at 2 o'clock. I shall arrive there at 7. Your Excellency, that is scarcely possible, the man ventured to say. I did not ask whether it was possible. I told you that it must be done if it kills all my horses. Quick, rouse the whole stable. Everyone must help. I shall wait at the window until I see the men ride away. The man bowed silently. He knew that opposition was futile, but he muttered under his breath. To ruin 6 of her best horses in one night, just for the sake of that man in Ammergau, she ought to be put under guardianship. The courtyard was instantly astir. Men were shouting and running to and fro. The stable doors were thrown open, lanterns flashed hither and thither, the trampling and neighing of horses were heard, the noise and haste seemed as if the wild huntsman was setting off on his terrible ride through the starless night. The Countess stood, watch in hand, at the lighted window, and the figure of their mistress above spurred every one to the utmost haste. In a few minutes the horses for the relays were saddled, and the grooms rode out of the courtyard. The Victoria with the pair of blacks must be ready at 2, the head groom said to old Martin. You must keep a sharp lookout. I don't see how you will manage those fiery creatures in that light carriage. The Countess heard it at the window, but she paid no heed. If only she could fly there with the light carriage, the fiery horses, as her heart desired. Forward was her only thought. Must I go too? Asked the maid, pale with fright. No, I shall need no one. The Countess now shut the windows and went to her writing desk, for there was much to be done within the few short hours. Her father's funeral, sending the announcements, all these things must now be entrusted to others, and a representative must be found among the relatives to fill her own place. She assigned as a pretext the necessity of taking a short journey for a day or 2, adding that she did not yet know whether she could return in time for the funeral of the prince. Her pen fairly flew over the paper, and she finally wrote a brief note to the Duke, in which she told him nothing except her father's death. The 4 hours slipped rapidly away, and as the clock struck 2, the Victoria drove to the door. The Countess was already standing there. The lamps at the entrance shone brightly, but even brighter was old Martin's face, as he curbed the spirited animals with a firm hand. To Ammergau, Martin, said the Countess significantly, as she entered the equipage. Hi. But I'll drive now, cried the old man, joyously, not suspecting the sorrowful state of affairs, and off dashed the steeds as though spurred by their mistress' fears, while guilt and remorse accompanied her with the heavy flight of destiny.